Hi folks, the purpose of this brief mini lecture is to explain how you might go about organizing your evaluation argument, your film review. So probably one of the more important aspects of this entire review is going to be the title. Now the title isn't something that you have to come up with right away. You can actually write it after you've completely finished writing the entire essay, and sometimes that's really the easiest thing to do. But just understand that the title itself is extremely important, because what it does is it sets up the expectation for the reader of what you're going to say in the entire body of your paper. For instance, imagine that your film review actually is appearing in a newspaper and someone's flipping through the pages, looking at the articles, and you want them to, when they see your title, to want to read your review. So you're going to want something that's going to be interesting to them and maybe catch their attention. But more importantly, once you have that attention, you want that title to completely set up the expectation for the reader of what you're going to talk about in your paper. So the example that I have here is I'm assuming that I'm writing about James Cameron's Avatar. Now, if you've seen this movie, you know that it's completely digital. All the acting is actually taking place through digitized characters on a screen. Actors are, providing the voiceovers, however. But Cameron's movie, if you saw it in IMAX 3D like I did, it was just totally and completely amazing. I'd never seen anything like it. And so for me, when I left that theater, that was what left with me. Now, it was a good story. There was a great story, and the acting was good as far as the acting, as far as the voiceovers go. But for me, visually, it was just like something I'd never seen before. So if I were writing a review of that, that would be what I would want to leave my reader with, is to understand that, hey, all these other things are really good, but ultimately this is what's most important in this film, is that it's doing things visually that no other film has ever done before. So my title might be something like James Cameron's Avatar, a visually stunning film that does not disappoint. It lets my reader know, A, what my film is and who the director is. It also lets them know what my main point is going to be, that I'm recommending this film based upon its visuals. The intro is just as important as that title, for it also sets up the expectation for your reader for what your entire review is going to say. Perhaps the most important part of that intro is the lead-in. It's probably the most difficult to write as well. But you want to find a way to lead your reader into the ideas that you're going to discuss in the paper. Perhaps in that lead-in you could discuss some visually important movies from the past, and sort of set up Cameron as someone who's doing things in sort of that tradition, but now has gone a step beyond all of them. That might be a good way to lead in. So whatever your film is, you're going to need to find a way to lead them into it. And that might be where some of these film reviews that you've gathered and read might provide you a way into the discussion of your review here. Obviously, in an intro, it's also very important that you preview the main ideas that you present in the body, as well as state an overall claim. That overall claim has to be in your intro somewhere. Typically, it's the last sentence of the opening paragraph, but does not have to be, but it does have to be somewhere in that introduction. And remember, your overall claim will be a value judgment, and it's going to be whether you recommend this film and why, or whether you not recommend this film and why. Now, the so what might be, along what I was discussing a little while ago of, okay, so what if this film is visually stunning? Why does that matter? Well, again, I could place it into the context of films like Gone with the Wind, who, for the first time presented a very visually stunning film in ways that other films hadn't done before, or maybe Wizard of Oz, who used Technicolor for the first time. There are many ways that I could provide a context for the so what there, but that's what I mean by providing the so what question, and that's, okay, so this is visually stunning, so what? Give them a brief explanation of something there that's going to provide a context for the rest of your paper. So again, just remember the introduction sets up a preview of the entire body of your paper, so you need to make sure that it does that. Now in the body, that's where you're going to provide the details of your argument. This is where you're going to discuss the different criteria that you've chosen to evaluate. In this particular case here, I've chosen acting, cinematography, and special effects. I chose acting because in Avatar, evaluating acting is very unlike evaluating acting in any other film. Because, again, it's a digital film that has digital actors, so not real bodies, but characters are providing voiceovers for those digitized bodies, and so you've got sort of a different scenario there that you would find than you would find in other films. So what I would have to do there is I would have to come up with some judgments, so I'm going to have to explain what I like or dislike about something, and I want to find several things that I can say about that, at least two, maybe three, perhaps even more. And for each of those, I have to provide evidence and explanation to support my judgment about it. Now, as far as how many judgments you have, again, that's going to depend on which film you've chosen and how much you have to say about each one of these things, because ultimately your review must be 4 full pages type double space. So you may have only 2 judgments in acting, but feel like you have 3 or 4 things that you can talk about in cinematography and 1 or 2 in special effects. That's fine. Ultimately, you just need to have several criteria and talk about, you can make as many judgments about those as you'd like, and that's fine. Just be sure you have 4 full pages. And so essentially you're just going to follow that pattern of take the criteria, make a judgment about it, provide the evidence and the explanation. So you're going to need to go into the film and say, in this particular part of the movie, in this particular scene, this happens, this is why the acting is either good or bad, and be very specific about why, and do that for each of those criteria and each of those judgments. Remember, you're explaining what you like or dislike, and each of these likes or dislikes is going to play into that claim you made in the intro, that overall claim in which you're either recommending or not recommending this film. Probably one of the other more important paragraphs in the paper is the final one, and that final paragraph, the conclusion, is going to have to contain some very specific things also. In the conclusion, you summarize the main points of the body. So you're going to summarize, the main things that you discussed, the acting, the cinematography, special effects, and the points you made about that. And then you're going to restate the overall claim. It should be similar to what you said in the opening, but using different language. So it should say the same thing, but just not using the same words. And then you want to again provide us a so what, like you did in the intro. So what, the film is visually stunning, why does that matter? Give that to us again. And when I grade a paper, one of the first things I do is I look at the title, so I can set up an expectation for myself of what I'm going to read. Then I read the intro, and then I read the conclusion. And when I read the intro and the conclusion, those two things should match one another. When read together, they should form one idea. And that's because the intro is a preview of what you're going to say, and the conclusion is a summary of what you said. And in each one of those, you should have stated an overall claim, which is the main point that you're trying to prove in your paper. And you should have stated it in both places. So these two pieces should fit together and lock together, sort of like a puzzle piece does. So be sure that you're doing these things. Now, a lot of times it's actually easier to write all the body paragraphs first, to say everything you need to say about those things, and then go back and write your intro and conclusion. Because if you try to write the intro first, then a lot of times if you change anything in the body, you have to go back and revise the intro. So as long as you know what your overall claim is going to be, you can go ahead and say everything you want to say in the body about all those main points you're going to discuss, about all those criteria and those evidence and judgments and everything, and then go back and write your intro and write your conclusion. But be sure that your paper does these very, very specific things, and you might want to follow this sort of rough outline of what I have here, but again, just keep in mind um, the number of criteria that you have and the number of judgments that you have is flexible. Just be sure that you have several criteria and that you make a couple of judgments about each, just enough that you have a minimum of 4 full pages for this assignment.